What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Alexander Usyk once again. Get this. Team Usyk, the trainer of Alexander Usyk, Sergey Lapine, had this to say about Deontay Wilder's last fight. He said, Deontay Wilder is a name that's been mentioned. Usyk does not fear Wilder. From Wilder's last fight, I didn't see anything new. This guy is very simple. He goes out and hits, and he has a very strong punch. He compensates for his lack of technique, Lapine said. Wow. Okay. Let me counterpunch. I would go ahead and 50% disagree. Okay. But not, let me say 30% disagree. Because Wilder did, anything new. It's kind of hard to really gauge what was new and what wasn't. The only thing we could see that was new on Wilder was his size, his speed. Because of his size, his speed had increased. He was able to move naturally the way that God meant him to be. Slim, thin, and strong. He didn't need to pile on that weight. I think that was because of Tyson Fury's mind game and the comments that Tyson Fury said in the third fight that he was coming in at 300 pounds. He felt that he needed to overcompensate and get buff, to be strong enough, I guess, to take on Tyson Fury, since Tyson Fury was going to be bigger than he was in their rematch in the second fight. Okay. But nonetheless, he did come in smaller. He did use the ring more. He was more mobile, and he showed his mobility during that round, the only round that we were, blessed to watch in that fight. And it showed that speed is power with that punch. It showed that even though he didn't have full extension on that punch, it still landed. The question you ask yourself, if he would have hit someone else with that punch, would they be able to get up? Is Robert Helenius punch resistant shot at this point? He's 38. The older you get, the more vulnerable you are in not taking shots any longer. Even though he did stop Adam Kalnaki, I think that was his claim to fame, stopping this undefeated guy that was moved up in the rankings, right? So I think at the end of the day, Robert Helenius, we don't really know how good his chin really was unless he goes back in there and fights someone else. But, even if he does that and he gets stopped by someone else, people will just credit Wilder for, breaking down the armor of the fighter, with his single one-shot action hand cannon. All right. So it's hard to gauge. But he is right about Wilder, though. Wilder does have a punch. He says he goes out and he hits, and he has a very strong punch, and he compensates for his lack of technique. That's something that we've seen for Wilder in the past, but we don't know about that now because we don't have a lot of time to see. We didn't have we couldn't see what he can do. We didn't see what he could work on. We could look at the first round all day, but we didn't see him really avoid a lot of shots because Helenius didn't have really time to throw a lot of shots. I mean, he threw some shots, and Wilder was, he was eluding those shots, which was smart. He got the hell out of the way of these attacks from Helenius. Even though they were slower from a slower fighter, he was still able to dash and move and to be quick and witty. And that's something I ain't seen in Wilder since 2019 maybe. You know what I mean? And really not even then, honestly, because he had started to gain weight, in the Dominic Brazil fight in 19 and in the Luis Ortiz rematch fight, he was bigger too. So, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I haven't seen him quick-witted probably until 18, probably when he fought Tyson Fury. The first time he had some speed on him, and he was able to carry that right-hand power into the last round with him being smaller. So, it's hard to gauge, but if they were basing that on what they know, sure. You know what I mean? And that's all we can really go off on, of what he used to do, but then I would caution anybody that thinks, Malik Scott is not doing his due diligence to prepare Wilder defensively. So you think that fighter is one dimensional, and you think it's the same old shit, or you think that, hey man, he has lack of technique. Whereas I don't think it was lack of technique. I think it was lack of interest of using technique. Because of someone that relies on their power so much, the arrogance and the ego that's built behind the power that you have can always retard or deter you from anything. Like he did. He's saying you don't need technique when you got power. When anyone says stuff like that, that lets you know that they're really not concerned with technique. But I think his interest has been rebuilt by Malik Scott, and he's learned, like, hey, that's why. And I bet you anything that when Wilder's learning the defensive things that he's used to, he's now remembering, shit, Mark Breland did this shit with me. He might not admit it, but Mark, the same things that he's practicing that he didn't practice before, defensive drills and eluding drills, working more on your defense, hit without being hit, those type of things. I think it probably flashes back in his brain to know this is what Mark Breland was trying to help him improve on back then, that other fighters or vested powers that be didn't really allow Mark Breland to do what he wanted to do with Deontay Wilder. And I think because of that, they clashed, you know what I mean? Because Mark wanted him to practice a certain way like he knew, and how he wanted to practice him. And other fighters and other trainers like JD's or whatever didn't really, no, don't do that. No, Mark, no. Don't do that, man, no. So I think, the interest is back with Wilder, saying all that to say that, So it's interesting to hear the response from Team Usyk, and they're really not impressed with a lot of stuff, but then it's really not anything to be impressed on defensively. Now, power-wise, offensive-wise, hell yeah it is. You don't even hit a man with your full extension and you're able to do that to him? Like, really? He just kind of, you know what I mean? And it really wasn't a turn. He really didn't turn his, he just came off the ropes and caught him. And Helena is like, you swear he got hit by a 50 cal. He went into immediate shock, right? But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Team Usyk saying that they weren't impressed with Deontay Wilder's last performance, and Alexander Usyk is not afraid of Deontay Wilder. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys been Counterpunch. Peace!